Welcome back to Sunrise Today, keeping our focus on the amendments to the Electoral Act. We're joined now by Solomon Arigbabu, who is the chairman of the Southwest for Transition Monitoring Group. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Well, these amendments, do you think that they're far-reaching enough to prevent, to a large extent, electoral violence?
Thank you very much. The Senate's recommendations are quite encouraging. Gives some hope that if we can align all the parallel processes that are happening at other levels, the Namani Commission, and the Namani Committee, and the House of Rep, if we can align all of this and have a single outcome, and it's as robust as this, then there's hope, for electoral reforms being achieved. Of course, we are still studying the implications of some of the recommendations. But it's quite encouraging that at least we are turning, because you would realize that in spite of the successes of the 2015 general elections, the introduction of the card reader, the story is not the same for everybody. It's if it suits you, if you're successful, you commend it, and for those who are on the other side of the lock, they frowned at it. Of course, we know that. Now, because the most significant recommendation of the Senate committee in this regard is that now Nigeria can do electronic voting. And this is what we have all clamored for. However, it doesn't just stop at that, because we know that there are implications for this. We saw some of the shortfalls of the card reader in 2015. And we know that whoever gets the brunt of a faulty process will not, find it funny. So it won't just stop at making this recommendation. It means that as a nation, when we do take this as the new law, then we have to make the right investments in both the technology and human resources, and even in the citizenry, to prepare people that this is the new thing, this is the new reality.
You've looked at this latest amendments of the Electoral Acts and what the senators are trying to set right, just so that the process becomes watertight, and we don't have issues of violence and other issues that usually erupt during elections. Are you fully satisfied that with what has been amended in the Electoral Act to this point, are you confident enough that going into 2019 we will have less of violence, for instance, less of manipulation of election results? The announcement of the result itself comes in maybe better still, real time?
Well, part of it, which is that there will be a real time announcement of results. I mean, sending the results, to a central, electronically.
Not announcement, though.
Not announcement. It's sending the results, electronically. Is good, especially if the first process is at the local, at the polling booth, where the process must be transparent at the polling booth. So it's not just sending something electronically. What you're going to send must be something that we have all agreed on. Because you will see that it's citizens that have been monitoring this result, and citizens are the ones who have been keeping the vigilance to ensure that, okay, we are able to ensure that the right thing gets transmitted. So yes, that's a positive development. However, there are other, because you did mention that the issues of possibility of violence. The biggest thing that has incentivized people into violence is because nobody has really been brought to book for electoral violence, and the Senate's recommendation is not far-reaching enough in that regard, because one of the things that INEC has asked for, which civil society has asked for, is that let us have an independent body that is going to deal with electoral crimes. Not only the violence, but also those who benefit from rigged process, from fraudulent processes in the electoral process. They should also bear the brunt. Because if you don't do that, then there's no deterrence. People get there and use the resources of the state.
But you need to prove that it is the fault of theirs to benefit. What if they say, well, that's not my own fault?
Well, we do know that sometimes, most of the time when people benefit from fraudulent electoral processes, when you investigate, you will see that they have done some tampering, either with the process or with the handlers of the process. And so you see people going to benefit in offices, take salaries, take all the emoluments, and when the court eventually says you are not the right person to be there, they just go home and, you know, happily ever after. So we need to ensure that the process of disincentivizing electoral rigging, electoral fraud, electoral violence is solid enough to be a deterrence, you know, for those who sit behind the doors and, you know, plan all of these things.
You know, looking at some of the first points you highlighted, which has got to do with accreditation. That's where the whole thing starts, at that polling center. But now, this recommendation now says that there shall now be full biometric accreditation of voters with smart card readers and all of those. So does this take care of that particular process?
Like I said, this is something we all clamor for, this is something we all hope for, but it's not going to be, now that it's been said, it's just going to happen. We have to make a lot of investment. But if this happens, and we're able to get that process right, it does take care of a lot of things. But it still does not mean that those who want to perpetrate violence will not think beyond this. People have gone as far as, you know, carrying ballot boxes. So there's also nothing stopping them from coming to seize the electronic devices, you know, even during the vote or after it, you know, and they could do it, if they could do it in a sufficient number of places to nullify an election, maybe say for House of Rep, for instance, or House of Assembly, if you could do it in a number of wards, you know, sufficient enough to nullify the process of the election, you've still disrupted, you know, the process. So that's why, aside from that recommendation, there are other recommendations that should support that process. Recommendations that should make it very punitive for anybody found involved in planning, in executing any acts of electoral crime, violence, and what have you. So when we do that, when we make the deterrence sufficiently stiff, then we will be reaching. There is not going to be a leap into where we want to be. It's still going to be a journey, because even citizens need to come to this new reality, you know, that we are going electronic now, and things will be a bit different from the way it used to be. So a lot of investment needs to be made in the appropriate technology, in training of personnel, even in power.
That's a different. That's what INEC will now have to come up with, the budget, the proposition. Yes. They do that. But let's look at the challenges faced in the field, and as connected with these recommendations. What did you see out there, and has any of these amendments addressed any of those issues for a start?
Of course, largely the recommendation that results should be transmitted electronically would really help, because we do know that a lot of the changing of results happens from ward collation to local government collation. Mostly before you get to the state collation, the region is perfected. And this is seen in many elections that has happened. And especially for those places that are hard to reach. We have been to places to monitor elections where civil society observers are not even allowed in some of those places. Not by agents of the state, but by people who have been hired to, you know, intimidate and harass. So, but when you have a situation where some of the, and that's why I keep making it a Siamese twins, that as you're improving the process, you also need to ensure that, you know, adequate security and what have you is also provided. Because again, even this process you are talking about, citizens, agents of candidates and political parties need to validate what is being transmitted. It's a good recommendation, but it has to be validated from the source that is being transmitted from.
Let's talk about the process itself, the voting process, and from the start, when you have to go get your PVCs. Yes. Our understanding is that there's just so much more, millions of PVCs that are yet uncollected from INEC, and INEC is going ahead to start the process again, and a continuing process for those who don't have it, to try to get their PVCs and get them ready for elections. Would you say that this electoral reforms, and I mean the amendments to the Electoral Act, has it been able to address to this point that voters education, just so that people are able to know your rights to go get your PVCs, your rights to vote, your rights to be voted for, and the whole process continues like that. Are you satisfied, or is there anything you would like to see the senators do about this in this regard?
Well, in all fairness, it's not so much about amending the laws that would change that. I think it's about investing the right quantum of resources. INEC needs to do a lot more in terms of voter education. But then political parties are not leaving. They leave the stage once the elections are over. So they are not doing their bit. Civil society, we're coming in, but we could do a lot more. So different stakeholders in the polity need to help Nigerians to know that you don't complete an electoral cycle and then go to bed and wait till the politicians come out with their drums and bags of promises again. So we need a lot of voter education. It's not sufficient. I don't think that is the law that the Senate is making. I think what the Senate and any other duty bearer could do is that when INEC and agencies like National Orientation agencies and the rest of them do come with their budgets, for some of these things, they should be pragmatic enough to approve and also perform the oversight function to ensure that those monies are spent as they are proposed.
All right, we'll take a quick moment, but we'll be back and continue our focus on the electoral reforms. Join us again.